Welcome back to Great Sports Debates, and today we are going to try and identify the 10 greatest individual NBA seasons. So, the criteria for this will just allow one season per player, just so we have a little bit of variety, and it's not a video filled with Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain seasons, and maybe a couple of Kareem. So, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the numbers first. You know, those are facts, those give context to what a player did, followed by their perceived impact on defense from what we saw, any kind of awards, how they were rated, block steals, and things of that metric. Next, we'll look at team success, which is obviously important, but not necessarily completely impacted by one player, and the sometimes overlooked number of games played. You know, if you played great for 60 games, that's totally different than someone that played great for 82 games. So with that, we'll start by talking about the 9th and 10th spots, which could have easily been mixed in a lot of different seasons and directions we could have went. It's really close at that point. The lack of games, defense, and or domination compared to peers was the deciding factors of leaving off seasons from Giannis, the Joker, Bird, James Harden, who had several really great seasons, McAdoo, who the same, just really about 3 or 4 really good offensive seasons, Moses Malone, who of course had, 31 and like 15 with a bunch of offensive rebounds, and T-Mac, who had a couple of really strong years before back injuries got the best of them. And there were some other really big names that, despite looking for the best seasons and thinking they might slide in, that just really missed the cut because this was some serious competition. With that, let's start with probably the most controversial pick on the list, and at number 10, David Robinson in 1994. Now, I know people would probably be maybe prefer several of the other seasons I just mentioned to this one, but Robinson did post a 30.7 PER, which is behind seasons from both, Jokic and Giannis, but Robinson played 80 games, whereas, in some of these seasons where those guys were super efficient, they didn't have the same volume and they didn't have the same number of games. He also won 55 games, leading to 20 win shares, which has only been done 17 times, actually 18 if you count this season, which was technically 19.98 win shares. With a PER over 30, win share near 20, and a win share per 48 of 296, he just misses the elite 300 number there. It's an undervalued historic season, especially considering the pace of 95.1 that year, which is on the lower end, and the Spurs themselves played at a 90.1 pace. Robinson played a career-high 40.5 minutes per game in 94, and he led the league in scoring at 29.8 points per game, including 71 in the last game to beat out Shaq. It was a down year for Robinson efficiency and rebounds-wise, but he still had a .510 effective field goal percentage and 10.7 rebounds. Plus, he had a career-best 4.8 assists and 3.3 blocks. He was second all-defensive team that year, as him and Hakeem pretty much traded that honor back and forth, as well as Defensive Player of the Year in the early to mid-90s. Robinson also led the league in box plus or minus, as well as value over replacement player, and shot 74.9% from the stripe, raising his true shooting percentage to .577. His dominance pushed him into the top 10, with his PER over 2 points higher than the second place guy, who was Shaquille O'Neal, and more than 5 points higher than Hakeem, who was number 3. You compare that to some of these other seasons where, say, Joker had a historic 32 whatever PER, and there's other guys right there at 32 and 31. So that's a factor as well. The con for Robinson in 94 is it didn't feel like a dominant season or a dominant team compared to some of these other seasons that we'll see on the list. And they had an early exit from the playoffs. Now, as we move to number 9 on the list, it's the only other season that, I don't know, I guess in my opinion doesn't feel ridiculously dominant. But Kevin Durant did play 81 games and won 59 of them in 2014. And although LeBron had similar numbers to Durant in his only MVP season, Durant still hit career highs in points at 32 a game, PER at 29.8, win shares at 19.2, and win shares per 48 at 295. Plus, Durant was super efficient this season with a 560 EFG and a 635 true shooting percentage, which are both amazing numbers, especially considering his volume and everything he did on that team. Durant also had 7.4 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.7 blocks. Now, the Thunder didn't get past the Western Conference Finals, and KD wasn't elite on the defensive end, but it's still a really great season. As always, any comments, if you think someone's too high, needs a replace, just tell me who you think should be in that spot and who you're taking off, as well as making the case for them if you're going to make that point. Moving on, the number 8 season, I really like it better than 9 and 10, but it's clearly not in the top 7. So I'm pretty confident in the slotting of Oscar Robertson, who also had several other really strong seasons. But if I only got to pick one of his seasons, I'm going to go with his MVP season in 1964. Oscar played 79 games that year and led the league in free throw percentage and assists. Now, he didn't match Wilt in win shares, points, or PER, but still had career highs in those categories with 20.6 win shares, 31.4 points, and a 27.6 PER, with his blocks and steals not counted in a less efficient era. Still, Oscar posted a 48.3% from the field and a 576 true shooting percentage with no three-point line. Oscar also had a 278 win shares per 48, 9.9 rebounds per game, and won 55 games, second to only Boston. Also of note, he averaged a triple-double over a 5-year period and was All-NBA first team every year he played in the 60s, which I think was 9 years total. The number 7 season is the perfect balance of offensive, probably one of the best offensive seasons we've ever had, hands down. But it's also the worst offender on this list. And while Oscar may have more top seasons and be the better point guard overall, his best year does not match Steph Curry in 2016. Yes, Curry had a loaded team that allowed more spacing, better efficiency, and all that stuff. But Steph was still shattering records. And most impressive to me is his 318 win shares per 48. That's 8th all-time, only behind Kareem in 1972, 71, and 73, Wilt in 64, LeBron in 13 and 09, and Mike in 91. He also set the mark for three-pointers made with 402, which was over 100 more than the previous record, which he also held. He also made these threes at a remarkable 45.4%, which is already a high number, but when you consider the sheer volume, it's just amazing. Steph also had a career-high 2.1 steals, which happened to lead the league that year, as well as 30.1 points, which also led the league. His effective field goal percentage of .630 is higher than most centers, and his .669 true shooting percentage led the league. He also led the league in free throw percentage with a below-average Steph season of 90.8%. Steph also had league-leading and career highs in PER at 31.5 and win shares at 17.9. And really, that's only not hitting the 20 mark because the combination of his 79 games and only playing 34.2 minutes per game, which is definitely on the lower end compared to a lot of these other seasons, as they routinely blew teams out and won 73 games on the year. Curry also had 5.4 rebounds per game and 6.7 assists, with the only negative being that his team lost the finals. Number 6 on the list is another tough one, and you guys need to let me know in the comments if we need a cutoff time period or if I just got this guy too high. But for now, I'm slotting George Mikan in this spot based off his dominance and how much better he was than everyone else at the time. In his 6 years before his first retirement, he won 5 titles and was NBA first team all 6. In 1951, he led the league with a career-high 23.4 win shares, which was a record until Wilt surpassed it. And it was 5.4 more win shares than anyone else, which is a huge, huge number. He also led the league with a career-best 28.4 points per game, almost 7 points more than anyone else, a gap only beaten by Wilt, Harden, and MJ, I believe, off the top of my head. I can't think of any other seasons with the gap that large. So, Mikan also had 14.1 rebounds per game and 3.1 assists. A lot of the other numbers and advanced stats aren't really tracked to that point. And I get that this is the league's early days, so just let me know what you think about Mikan at 6. I know it might be too high, but hit me in the comments and let me know what you think there. Alright, now we're starting to get to the good part, and I feel pretty confident about most of these. So moving to number 5 is Shaquille O'Neal and his 2000 season. Not only was he great this year, but he was even better in the playoffs and especially the finals. Shaq was big at this point, but still athletic and a good defender, with 3 blocks a game. It was the only year outside of his first 3 that he played 79 games, and he won 67 of them. Shaq had a league-leading and career-best in PER at 30.6, win shares at 18.6, win shares per 48 at 283, and points at 29.7. He also had a career high in assists at 3.8 and minutes per game at 40. Shaq also led the league with 57.4% from the field, as well as having 13.6 rebounds per game on the year. The Lakers won the title, and this is definitely like the lowest pace of any of these, I'm pretty sure. I want to say the league pace was like 93 or so that year. So really slow pace, really small numbers, and Shaq was dominant across the board. So now we're moving into the top 4, and when I first came up with the idea of this video, I kind of already had these 4 seasons pictured at the top, although the order of one of them was a little different than I expected. At number 4, I need you guys' help in the comment section deciding between LeBron's 09 and 2013 season. It's a comparison between winning the title in efficiency versus carrying a really bad team to a great record and the Eastern Conference Finals. With numbers so close, I think most people lean towards the production per minute and the title in 2013. But in my personal opinion, just talking about like the best seasons, I'm actually leaning towards the pure numbers of 09 and everything he had to do on that team. Now, his defense was recognized as elite in 2013, but here's the comparison between the 2 years. At PER, he had a career best 31.7 in 2009 compared to 31.6 in 2013. He had a career best 20.3 win shares in 09 compared to 19.3 in 2013. He had 28.4 points per game in 09 compared to 26.8 in 2013. Here's kind of where you get a little bit of a flip with a 591 true shooting percentage in 09 to a ridiculous 640 with all the help he had in 2013. He also had a 530 effective field goal percentage in 09 compared to 603 in 13, and a 318 win shares per 48 in 09 to a career best 322 in 2013. LeBron also had 7.6 rebounds per game, 7.2 assists, 1.7 steals, and 1.1 blocks in 09, compared to 8 rebounds per game, 7.3 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.9 blocks in 2013. Both years they won 66 games, although he did play 5 more games in 09 for 81 games total. Either way, both seasons are elite and would be contenders for a top 10 season, even if we allow multiple player seasons. Okay, here's the part where everyone's going to get pissed at me and probably throw me in the comments, but at least listen to the words I'm saying before you get upset at how can MJ be number 3. Now, I'll be the first to admit Mike has 13 great seasons, at least 8 that were the best year, that year, and a few historical seasons, especially in the late 80s and early 90s. But 2 guys had best seasons that were just better when I really compared them and looked at the numbers. But moving into Mike had his best teams and best records in his second three-peat. His rookie year would be MVP worthy in some years, and his 87 season he scored over 37 points per game. But in my opinion, nothing really compares to his 1988 season, which I think is the best Jordan season. Not only did he have arguably his best offensive season, but it was also clearly his best defensive season, winning the Defensive Player of the Year with a career-high 1.6 blocks from a guard and a career-best and league-leading 3.2 steals, which I want to say that's probably at least top 10 all time. On top of that, he played all 82 games and led the league with a career-best 40.4 minutes per game. His .537 effective field goal percentage was by far his best at this point, and a remarkable number considering his position, the era, and his volume. His 84.1% free throw percentage on 10.5 attempts boosted his true shooting percentage to .603. Interestingly, his top 2 PER seasons are the exact same as LeBron's at 31.7 this year and 31.6 in 1991. Jordan also led the league with a career-high 21.2 win shares, which is amazingly one of 3 years he had over 20 win shares. His amazing 308 win shares per 48 led the league, but isn't even his career best. He dominated box plus or minus as well as value over replacement player at 13 and 12.5 as well. And we are just now getting to his 35 points per game, which is the 10th best ever, behind one of his own seasons, as well as a year by Kobe, Rick Barry, James Harden, and of course 6 Wilt Chamberlain seasons. Mike also posted 5.5 rebounds per game and 5.9 assists. In the first year, his big numbers translated to winning, with 50 wins on the season and his first playoff series win, as well as his first official MVP. So with all that being said, the controversial 2 spot is what I initially thought would be 3, but when I really looked at it, it wouldn't be fair to the metrics if I didn't take Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's 1972 season. And honestly, if you look at his Milwaukee career, like, his career average in Milwaukee, like, could be a contender for a top season. And even though Kareem had great numbers in 71 where he won the title, he only played 1 less game at 81, and they still won 63 games in 72, losing to the great 72 Lakers with Wilt Chamberlain in the playoffs. Kareem had a career best and league-leading PER of 29.9, as well as setting the records that still stand for win shares and win shares per 48 at 25.4 and 340, which are just huge numbers. Kareem also scored a career high and league best 34.8 points per game on a very efficient 57.4% from the field, as well as a .603 true shooting percentage. He also played a career high 44.2 minutes per game with 16.6 rebounds per game and 4.6 assists. Now, selecting the number 1 player on this list was very easy, but getting the right year was a little trickier than you might think. I mean, Wilt's rookie year, he posted points per game and rebounds per game totals that no one else has matched besides him. I narrowed it down, though, to 3 of his seasons. The 1967 season, where he won his first title, beating the Celtics dynasty, while destroying the field goal percentage record at 68.3% from the field and dominating all advanced statistics by a large margin while leading the league in a ton of categories. Yet, the runner-up year was slightly better, in my opinion, in 1964, his first complete season where he's doing everything well, not just scoring and rebounding, with 5 assists a game, a career best 25 win shares, and win shares per 48 of 325, while having a tremendous season, really only failed by his teammates that shot 35% on open shots and layups, leading to him wanting out of San Francisco and getting booted out of the playoffs. Despite these great years, you already know how can I go against the 62 campaign, where in that year alone he has more records than any other player has total. We'll start with the big ones: 4,029 points and 50.4 points per game. Then you look at his PER of 32.1 without his crazy blocks and steals numbers included. Wilt had 23.1 win shares, boosted by his record 48.5 minutes per game. Yeah, that's correct. More than the 48 minutes there are in a game. Playing 79 complete games in an 80-game season. He also had 2,052 rebounds, as the only member of the 2,000 rebounding club, and 25.7 rebounds per game. Both marks only beaten by other Wilt Chamberlain seasons. This was also the year he scored 100 in the game and has records for 40, 50, and 60-point games, as well as consecutive streaks and all kinds of records you can check out in Wilt Chamberlain, the record book video. Now, Wilt's one con was his free throw shooting. However, this was his best year in free throw shooting, both in percentage at 61.3 and attempts by a large margin at a staggering 17 attempts a game, as teams really just couldn't figure out how to stop Wilt, whether they double-teamed, triple-teamed, sagged, and tried to force the ball out of his hand. Yes, the pace was extremely high at 131.1 for his team, but I don't think it's fair to just mathematically calculate that down to the average without considering the impacts of playing at that speed, while I do acknowledge the numbers are inflated. So with all that, that's my first take on making this list. Let me know if you prefer the top 10 seasons, regardless of players, and that might be something like for Wilt, for Jordan, and maybe a Kareem and LeBron season if we did it that way. But, I'm open to anything. Just let me know what you like. Also, let me know if I missed any seasons, because it is hard to find every season and think of every season off the top of the head to check. I know I did look at a few of the obvious ones like Kobe, Magic, West, KG, Duncan, and a few others that, their best years just simply didn't make the cut. But as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. As I've been noticing, over 95% of people that watch these videos are not subscribed. So if you do like the content, please subscribe. This might be the last NBA video for a while as we start moving into our NFL picks and selections and things of that nature. But thanks for watching.